from each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are, from memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried, and with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight, reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey, and we are back today with the 109th Disney feature-length film from the date of February 1st of the year 1973. It is a film called The World's Greatest Athlete. The World's Greatest Athlete is a live-action sports film starring the legendary John Amos as well as Tim Conway in his first of a few Disney films. Before we jump right in or get any facts, would you like to start us off with a synopsis about The World's Greatest Athlete?
A down-on-his-luck coach travels to Africa where he spots the world's greatest athlete, a white Tarzan type. The coach brings him back to the US of A to compete.
Now, when you heard the name The World's Greatest Athlete, did you think of Tarzan?
No, I did not. I also did not picture a blonde Tarzan.
Yeah. Got any facts or anything before we go ahead and jump right in?
I do, but I'm just going to sprinkle them in because I only really have two, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just wait till I get to them.
All right. Well, like we said, this is a live action sports film, and you can take it away then.
All right. The film opens up in the middle of a football game. Then we end up in the locker room during halftime to a speech from the coach. Then we transition to a baseball game. Same coach, but in a dugout, still giving speeches to the team. Then we end up in a basketball game, and you guessed it, same coach, back in the locker room, giving the team an inspirational speech.
Yeah, each time he says, such and such sport is my life. So this dude's got a lot of lives. He's like a cat.
Yeah.
And they're all different sports.
Yes, he is very
Into it, passionate.
dedicated to being a coach, but
Mhm.
apparently to terrible teams.
Yeah, he can't. They don't seem to win.
Yeah. However, he's giving the speech, but the team had already lost, and they were literally about to take back out to the court. As he says, I was meaning next week. So obviously these people aren't very smart either.
Or he's just so riveting with his speeches.
Oh yeah,
It's so
they're
riled
gonna
up.
take out to the
Yeah.
nobody's there. No idea. So the opening credits finally start rolling. And during those, we roll into a river rowing team. Then we see some divers. Then tennis. Then a marching band on a football field. Back with the coach, we are playing football again. We find out these teams aren't that great. So, opening credits are over. We're back on the football field. Team has lost. Again. Then the head of the Alumni Association starts lecturing Archer. We find out his name is Archer at that point, who's the coach, about how he can't win anything.
No, just like the head of alumni's like son is also there, like being all snooty, like.
Yes, and I have something very funny to tell you about the son.
Okay.
But I'm going to hold on to it.
Okay.
His name is Leopold.
Mm-hmm. And he's a snoot.
Yes. Anyway. All right. So, he gets fed up and says he's not going to take this anymore. and just starts to walk off after he rips up a piece of paper.
Tears up the contract.
And the assistant tells him, well, hold on, I'm going to go turn in my notice. Oh, you don't need to do that, the coach tells him. The contract I ripped up wasn't mine, it was yours. Such a nice dynamic here. Anyway, so they fly to Zambia and we find them out on a safari.
I don't want to cut it off if you said it, if you're gonna say it, and if you are, I'm sorry. But like when the assistant coach is like, "Why are we going there?" And he says, "Oh, I want to go back to my roots," which is a callback because he was famously in the film Roots, which actually came out after this film. But it was a nice little.
Yes. Yeah. Archer tells his assistant that he wanted to get back to his real roots, and he starts reflecting on how none of his teams are winning. So this is very important to him. They see a cheetah running, and he talks about how fast it is. And the guide interrupts them and tells them that the cheetah is fast, but not as fast as Nanu. Needless to say, while Archer is watching Nanu, he starts envisioning all the different sports that Nanu would be great at. So he tries to approach him to discuss this, but enter hijinks.
But before that, can you explain, like, for our listeners, like, can you explain that scene? So a cheetah is running by, and they're like, the fastest mammal, and then the guy's like, not faster than Nanu, and then you just see this guy running by in like a Tarzan-esque loincloth, just like pacing with this cheetah.
True. I'm not going to go into it because Jeff just explained it. I don't really know how else to explain that any better.
Okay, continue.
It was an extremely fast cheetah.
Yeah.
And then enter
really fast
Nanu running in behind. So he finally gets to talk to Nanu about his plan, but he's not really buying into it. He's basically happy where he's at. He doesn't want to go anywhere. A guide talks to the coach about not wearing his hat because at this point they look like they're in some kind of like jungle tour. So he lectures the coach about not wearing his hat. So he sends a guy back to the camp to go get it. But another guy also ends up going with that guy. And the coach asks, well, how many guys does it take to go get my hat? Like, it shouldn't take 2 guys to go get my hat. And that's when we find out from the guide that in this tribe, tribal law states that if a guy saves a guy's life, then that person has to follow the person that they save for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
I explained that well.
Yeah, I think it should be the other way around, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I agree. It was very confusing.
It should be the other way around.
Anyway, so the coach comes up with this scheme for Nanu to save him, so that way he has to then follow the coach everywhere for the rest of his life. Because he's going to coach him, and this is going to be his ticket to great things. So, more hijinks.
Sand hijinks.
Yeah, he was going to go stand in quicksand, so that way Nanu had to save him, but he didn't end up doing it. The assistant did. Then he tries to fake a drowning, but he's saved by a woman. But then we find out that tribal law doesn't apply to the woman the same way that it applies to a man. So at that point, the woman doesn't have to follow him around for the rest of his life. So he got lucky because he was not about this lady following him around for the rest of his life. He falls into a pit with a tiger, but then we find out that the tiger is actually Nanu's pet, and he's had it since it was a cub. So Coach was never really in any danger at that point. But then he starts to act like he's not feeling well.
Yeah, that's really all. They made a plan that they were like, oh, that you're just going to give him Tylenol or whatever.
Aspirin.
Aspirin.
But then Nanu tells him that jungle medicine is better than that. So
Mhm.
he picks him up and runs him over to the healer, which I think they also referred to him as a witch doctor at one point, but I've just referred to him in my notes as a healer.
Nanu's godfather.
Yes, and then we find out that it is Nanu's godfather later. Um, so tribal justice is going on. So two guys have faked being sick, so they could get out of working, and they get poisoned by the healer of the tribe. He tells the coach now that he hates fakers and that they shouldn't have faked it, but they're just going to be sick for a long time. He didn't really kill them. So he makes a medicine for the coach to take. Coach takes it and then falls onto the floor asking for the village medicine. The healer looks at the bottle and reads aspirin and says it couldn't hurt, so Nanu runs off to go get it. When he comes back, he takes it and then he says he is healed and tells everyone that Nanu just saved his life.
Yep.
Just magically, he just swallowed it. That's not how pills work, but okay. The healer then talks about the tribal law and how Nanu must follow the coach now. Any thoughts?
No. The only thing is, so Nanu is not like the rest of the tribe. Um, he
His
was
parents were missionaries.
his parents were missionaries, but then he got left behind or whatever.
Yeah, I never understood that.
He got left behind, so then like the Godfather tribesmen like took him in, and Nanu looks like a pale Tarzan. At one point earlier, we didn't really touch on it, but at one point earlier, what? Yeah, like at one point earlier when the coach, John Amos, his character, is like trying to catch him. He's like chasing him up a tree, and Tarzan's just like swinging from the tree like he's like Tarzan. So they're really playing up to the whole Tarzan thing.
Yeah.
But he clearly is somebody who was left behind from the missionaries, and the Godfather guy was like friends with
His
his
parents.
parents. And but he now has to follow them, and he's gonna meal ticket them. So continue.
All right. So he's not very happy about this, but he ends up packing his stuff up and going. They get on a plane to fly back to the United States. And um, in this scene, the healer tells his friend that he didn't fall for the trickery of the coach, but felt it could be a good experience for Nanu as he feels like he's too innocent.
Mhm.
So he basically knew that the coach wasn't sick and he was also faking it, but whatever. So, Coach and his assistant are developing a plan on getting Nano enrolled in school.
Can we pause?
Hang on. We then see that Nanu has brought his tiger and tells them that the tiger isn't a fan of the plane.
In the weirdest thing, because it was like they pulled back like the first class curtain, and he's just like sitting there. Like, is it like a standing room only airplane? Like, it was really weird.
I don't know. 70s.
I guess.
Who knows? Well, I
Yeah.
think planes were way different back then. So they end up in America. So they've landed in the United States and they're back in a car, heading back to where they live, and the coach and his assistant are trying to figure out how they're going to get this tiger past Mrs. Peterson because she doesn't allow pets in the house.
Yeah, she's like the RA or whatever.
So we then find out that Miss Peterson is basically blind, along with pretty much everybody else in this film, because nobody hardly realizes that this tiger is a tiger.
It was put a hat on.
They put a coat and a hat on him. At one point, Miss Peterson grabs his tail and says, "Oh, here, he dropped his scarf."
Your scarf is dragging.
don't feel like a scarf, but okay, whatever. So anyway, lady can't see. Nanu then shows Coach his voodoo doll of Milo, who the assistant is, and more hijinks at this point because the coach is telling him that, oh, this is like witchcraft and people won't like that and it really doesn't work. You shouldn't believe in this and da 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 and give me that. And then the entire time, whatever they're doing to this doll as they pass it back and forth is happening to Milo, the coach
In the background.
or the assistant. Yeah. So then after some laughs, we find out that they have asked this girl, ironically, like Jeff said, they are playing up Tarzan. Her name is Jane,
Mhm.
and she is going to tutor him in 5 subjects. And at first, she was hesitant to agree to this because she didn't really think she had the time. But in walks Nanu, and it seems to be love at first sight. Poor Leopold.
Who's Leopold?
You'll find out.
The
Anyway.
Harry is the Harry.
No. Poor Leopold.
Well, Harry is also jealous.
I've not got there yet.
Okay.
Harry's not jealous yet.
Oh, Leopold is that guy. It's the son. Okay. Well, Harry's also jealous. So Harry and Leopold are both jealous.
He's not jealous yet. Anyway, so the coach starts coaching Nanu in all the sports that he coaches. He is like just pretty much amazed at like how good he is doing. So Jane tutors Nanu and the tiger. Harry gets jealous. There is this cute, romantic looking running scene where they are in a field dressed up very nicely like they've been on a date or going on a date, and they look like they're running towards each other, and Nanu just happens to run right past Jane and into the pouncing body of Harry.
Harry the tiger.
Quite hilarious. He tells Harry that you shouldn't be jealous. I like you more than Jane, except for when Jane teaches me biology. It's so weird. They had a whole lesson about muscles and the trapezius and arm muscles and how muscles work. And then they skipped over to, it was either Greece or Rome. I can't remember. I think it was Greece. Anyway, so we end up in an interview with the coach on finding Nanu and him join the NCAA. And he's talking about how he found him and how he is going to do great things. Enter Nanu's room. The tiger has woke him up with the alarm. It is time to get ready for his big event for the track team. And he has to go get in the shower. But we find out the tiger wants to get in the shower, and he tries to go in everybody's room to get in the shower, and nobody is having it. So he ends up outside, and the lady that apparently is blind is talking to a shirt that is hung up on a clothesline like it's a person. She's telling them a story. And she's also watering something, but is also showering the tiger, which I thought was quite hilarious. Any thoughts?
No. I think you might have missed something important, but I don't think we're there yet, so keep going.
Okay. So Jane takes Nanu for a walk after his practice is done. He thinks that he will make an A because they're not studying. They're just going to take a walk. They see other couples, and he asks her what they're doing, and she explains to him that they're kissing, and he asks her if she can teach him how to do that. And at this point, we have the most awkward kissing lesson, but he mentions that tomorrow will be a lesson on ancient Greece, right? So Nanu's godfather and the tribal healer have been invited to speak to the medical school about jungle medicine because, like Jeffrey mentioned earlier, Leopold is jealous. And in the background, he got this idea that he is going to get the um, the godfather to come and take Nano away so that way he can get his girlfriend back, Jane. So,
That's the part I thought you might have missed. So continue. Sorry.
so Nano's godfather and the tribal healer arrive uh, to the medical school to talk about jungle medicine. For a while there, I did not know his name was Leopold. I was just trying to busily take notes and pay attention at the same time. And I referred to Leopold as Nerd Boy because he reminded me of something. And for the life of me, I could not figure it out. So, Nerd Boy takes the healer and tells him that Nano is being exploited and is in great danger and could die from being pushed too hard. The healer heals the oldest alumni at like some kind of alumni event, but we find out that the guy could walk, and that wasn't his problem. The problem was he was deaf, and obviously that did not get fixed because he was still deaf.
Yeah,
and,
he does like this whole like Snake Charming thing about this dude like walking and he walks and they're like, oh, but he wasn't. He could walk the whole time.
So then Nerd Boy intercepts the healer and tells him that we got to go save Nano. So the healer ends up running into the assistant
Milo.
and getting very upset with him. And the assistant's basically telling him that his voodoo doesn't work. And he tells him, yes, it does. So the healer then shrinks him.
This is the funnest part of the whole film.
Yeah.
He shrinks the Milo down to like a little tiny.
Yeah. So he gets shrunk, and it has to be the scariest fingernails I've ever seen. Um, he has to climb a straw to get out of a drink. From there, he has to hold on to the straw, jump off the table and onto a chair. Then he slides down, but he lands in a lady's bag. So, quick fact.
Catch the airport.
It's quick fact. The scenes where Milo is shrunk to a miniature size were extremely expensive to shoot during the time the film was made due to the big cost of constructing very enormous props. The gigantic telephone itself cost $7,900 to make, whilst the lady's handbag and Chantel's totaled a total of $15,000
in 1973. Yeah. Well, 72 probably because it's came out in 73.
I thought that was very interesting. Anyway, so all this hijinks is going on. The coach runs into the healer, then goes to tell Nanu that the healer's in town and he's not happy. So the coach has basically told him he is off somewhere else. He's at the track. So he runs back in, tells Nanu, your godfather's here and he's not very happy. And then in a roundabout way tells Nanu that he tricked him with the aspirin bottle and that he really didn't save his life. So at this point, the assistant is still trying to get out of the lady's bag. It cuts to the scene back to him. He manages to call the coach, and for the life of me, I could not figure it out because he used a rotary phone. How he was able to speak and hear the coach only from the speaker end of the receiver.
He also had the misfortune of having to dial a 9 because he had to crank that thing all the way over. And he was so small. Yeah. Does it ever show him not like becoming not shrunk? Like how does he
Yes.
become not shrunk?
It does. So the healer at this point goes back and he turns the assistant life size again. He plans on following him to find the coach. So basically, it was very strategic of him to do so.
That makes sense.
Um, the coach then goes to Nanu to talk to him. Nanu tells him that if it's so important that he has to lie to him, he wants no part in it. However, Nanu then decides to go on to the track meet as he wants to do what has never been done before, which apparently was being in every event
Winning
and
every
winning
event.
it.
So Jim Thorpe, who is
No, it was being in every event
Yeah.
and winning it.
So Jim Thorpe, who is legitimately like one of the most famous athletes of all time, fell short of this.
Yep. And he basically wanted to know how he didn't win,
Yeah.
what he did wrong. So we go to the track meet, enter the different teams. You have somebody from the University of Central California, I think maybe.
Yeah, it was like UCLA,
Villanova.
bunch of people, Villanova, bunch of people.
Yeah. And then you have, is it Mary?
Yeah, I didn't
Maryville
write it
or
down.
something?
Sure.
Anyway, their mascot's a tiger, and the entire track team consists of nothing but Nanu. He is literally the only person on the team, which was quite entertaining. So at this point, I still did not know Leopold's name was Leopold, and he has entered the scene again. And I thought to myself, nerd boy, I figured it out. He reminds me of McLovin. That really wasn't it. But for some reason, I got McLovin vibes because I changed his name to McLovin here. So he has talked to the healer into causing Nanu to lose. So the healer tells him, yes, I'll do it when it's time. And he's going to use voodoo. So the coach is watching all of this go down. Nanu is winning pretty much every event he has entered thus far.
That one reporter is having the time of his life.
Yeah. There's a reporter that will ask his co-host something, but then the co-host maybe gets in maybe one and a half words, and then gets cut back off over and over and over again. So then, the healer ends up using voodoo, and Nanu's luck just starts changing, and he starts losing everything.
Yeah, so like what was it that we just watched? Now you see him, now you don't, where like the kids are invisible and they're like making like the golf clubs and the golf balls go like crazy ways. Like that's what this dude was doing with the voodoo. He was like catching like the discus and throwing it back the other way. And
Well, he was just doing things with the voodoo doll to him. So, like, the javelin gets thrown, but somehow it ends up flipping back around and then coming back at them. The shot put doesn't go where it needs to go, but that's when the announcer says, well, his luck seems to have turned for the worse. However, he still has 3 opportunities at each event, so he could still turn this around.
I don't think the Godfather was using voodoo. I think he was just using magic because they end up using voodoo against the Godfather afterwards.
He had a voodoo doll of him. He had a voodoo doll, and he took part of Nanu's jersey and wrapped it around the voodoo doll. So he did use voodoo.
Oh, so they both
and then
voodoo. It was like a voodoo war.
Yeah, and when it came time to do like the javelin, he wasn't using the actual doll. He actually had like a replica of like, I don't know, it looked like a porcupine needle, I guess, to represent the javelin. I don't know. So anyway, somehow I don't remember if it was the coach or I think it was Milo. I think Milo realized what was going on and said, remember when Nanu had the voodoo doll and the things were happening to me? I think the healer's doing it to him. And they talked to Nanu about it, and then he was like, that's exactly what's going on. But Godfather's magic is very strong.
Mhm.
So he wasn't sure if they could defeat him, but then they're like, we gotta find him. So coach and the assistant are like looking all up and down the stands, trying to find them. They can't find him, and poor Nano is still losing. And he's trying his hardest, but he is still losing no matter what he does. And then
You know, they did find in the stands though.
the tiger.
Tiger. Yeah.
But people didn't realize at that time it was the tiger still. He was dressed up in his trench coat and hat.
Mhm.
Still, people just completely oblivious to this tiger. So Milo, the assistant, they're giving up. They can't find him. But then he pulls out the voodoo doll that Nanu had of him, and he says, I got an idea. And somehow he had a feather from the healer, and he was trying to tell the coach, kind of like a kid back in a few movies ago tried to always tell his dad, I got an idea. So he sticks the feather in the head of the voodoo doll, and then the coach is like, oh, that's not gonna work, and he like throws it into a bucket. Well, when he does this, the healer flies out of the stadium and lands into the next side, where apparently like there's some kind of like swim meet going on, and he got perfect 10.
Yeah, all the judges give him a 10.
Yeah. So at this point, the healer is stuck in the water because of the voodoo doll, and they tell him he doesn't really have enough time. So what they're going to do is they're going to run him and help him get to each event, so that way he can still compete and have a chance to win.
Stop it.
He manages to do this and he wins it all, which is quite the feat.
Breaking record after breaking record after breaking record.
Yeah. And then it finally occurred to me that Leopold, are you ready for this? Looks just like a male version of Edna Mode. I was like, oh my God, this is probably the inspiration for Edna Mode. No capes.
Edna Mode is bougie, but
Well, I'm pretty sure Leopold is right up there. So I was so excited at the end of this movie when it finally occurred to me who he looked like, and it's Edna Mode.
well, that's like 40 years down the line.
Yeah, well, this was the inspiration for Edna Mode. It had to be
30 years down the line.
So anyway, quite entertaining. But at this point, Nano's won it all. He is in his room the next day reading all the headlines on the papers with Harry, and he's like, I am on the front page. I made all these papers. I won it all, but I don't feel any different. I feel like I should feel better. And he's like, I've got an idea. So then we find out that Nano has gone to the airport, and he tells the coach over the phone that he's going back to Africa. So the coach and the assistant are trying to come up with a way to keep him here while they're on their way there in the car. So they have settled on telling him that he can't go because he's in love with Jane. They finally come up with this is what would work, because everything else they were coming up with that won't work. But they're like, well, he does love Jane. So if we tell him that he can't go because he's in love with Jane, then that'll keep him here. And they tell him this, and then he explains, but Jane's going with me. So he's not staying.
Yeah, so basically the reason Nanu decides to go to like you said is because he says, why is it important to be better than other men who worked just as hard as he did?
Yeah.
So
and they didn't make the papers, but they worked just
they didn't
hard.
make the papers, but he did. So then the camera cuts and Jane is with Nanu at the airport.
Yeah. Um, so he is talking to the coach before he gets on the plane, and the coach tells him that he is definitely the world's greatest athlete and kind of wishes him his farewell. And then Nanu tells him that he is the world's greatest coach. Um, and then on their way walking out of the airport, they take a detour, and the coach and the assistant decide they're going to go to China.
Do you know what airplane they got on?
No.
Far Eastern Airlines.
Okay.
Thought that was funny.
Well,
Clearly not a real thing.
I thought you were going to say it was a reference to the park. I'm
No,
kind of let down by that now.
Far Eastern Airlines.
Yes. So they go to China. You see the Great Wall of China, and
It's not warped like a sword.
yeah, it's not warped. Um,
Deep dive in the magic pot, you know.
um, but they're on some kind of tour once again, and they see an extremely fast horse, and the coach is like, "That's a fast horse," and the guy that is leading his tour says, "But not as fast as Chen Yang."
The fastest kid in Asia.
Yeah. So you see the horse running, and then, like in our beginning scene in Africa, you then see a human running past the animal that's supposed to be like the fastest whatever in the land. So once again, the coach runs off to introduce himself to Chen Yang because he is going to try to find the next greatest athlete. The end.
That's the film.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think I would have enjoyed it better had I not been taking notes on it, like I did. Because I feel like I probably didn't catch it all the way I wanted to. Um, I did thoroughly enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to, but it was actually very good. It had some good laughing bits.
You, you know, like, because I'm so hip to the kids' lingo nowadays that I would say that this movie was strong mid. It's very mid level. Just it's there.
That's very sus, Jeff.
I don't know what that means, but yeah, mid. Um, so where did you rate it,
I've
or
been
what did
hanging out with
IMDb?
Emma. Anyway,
Did Emma say sus?
yeah.
That's sus. Go ahead.
I learned this in karate.
All right, whatever.
Anyway, um, so one more trivia fact before we're done here. The scenes featuring the African country of Zambia were not shot there, but were in fact filmed at the then 487-acre Lion Country Safari Park south of Disneyland in Southern California, owned by Ralph Helfer. The jungle sequences were shot at the Caswell Memorial State Park near Ripon, California.
If you've ever been there, deep dive in the magicpod at gmail.com.
Yeah, tell us about it. Anyway, it was a cute movie. IMDb rated it a 5.7 out of 10.
So,
I gave it a 6 out of 10.
so.
However, this does not Tarzan like its way swing onto my list. So
So then what is your list up to 1973?
to 1973. My list is 101 Dalmatians, The Parent Trap, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Napoleon and Samantha, Snowball Express, The Jungle Book, The Aristocats, Lady and the Tramp, and Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yeah, so you got to be way faster than being a mid movie to get onto my list. Slip on a star. Mine is staying the same.
How long did it take you to come up with that?
I just saw that right now.
Okay.
Girl, I'm so quick. I'm the fastest kid.
That's very sus.
I don't know what that means, but 101 Dalmatians, Mary Poppins, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Babes in Toyland, Napoleon and Samantha, The Aristocats, Pinocchio, and lastly, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and we'll put that right here. Um, Deep diving the Magic Pod, if you want to write in and talk about how you don't want to hear two, we'll say mid 30-year-olds talk about terms that they don't understand.
I understand completely.
But thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. We were up to the year 1973. That's pretty exciting. We are cruising right along. We are on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Deep Diving the Magic Pod at gmail.com if you want to write to us. If this is one of your favorite films, if you've ever even heard of this film, if you think that this is really the world's greatest athlete and not, Michael Jordan or anything. But but either way, so we made it up to the year 1973, like I said. So thank you for watching. Our next film, we go over to March of the same year for the film number 110, and it is the film that has the pleasure, I guess, of having at least, because I lost count, 15 reoccurring actors and actresses from previous Disney films. But most importantly, Fred MacMurray's final Disney film. He hasn't been out in a while, but he's back for his final. Like I said, from March of 1973, film 110. It is called Charlie and the Angel, talking movies I've never heard of before. Yeah, we'll talk to you then. We'll see if it's mid or sus.
No,
or
you did not use that correctly.
or hip, jiving. I don't even know.
Okay. Thanks for deep diving the magic.
But
Bye.